Imagine hearing that the United States burned through roughly half of one of its most advanced missile defense stockpiles, not defending American cities, not protecting American soil, but shielding another country from incoming ballistic missiles. That is the controversy now emerging around America's use of THAAD interceptors during the recent conflict involving Israel and Iran. And if the reported numbers are even close to accurate, the implications stretch far beyond the Middle East, because this is not just a story about Israel. It is a story about military readiness, alliance politics, industrial limits, and whether the United States can sustain multiple major crises at the same time. To understand why this matters, we need to start with the system at the center of the debate. THAAD, short for Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, is one of the most sophisticated missile defense systems ever developed. Its purpose is straightforward, but extremely difficult in practice. Intercept ballistic missiles during the final stage of flight before they hit their targets. These systems are expensive, technologically complex, and critically important to U.S. strategic planning. Each interceptor reportedly costs millions of dollars and takes significant time to manufacture. That matters because, according to recent reporting citing anonymous U.S. defense officials, the United States fired more than 200 THAAD interceptors during the conflict to help defend Israel from Iranian missile attacks. In addition to THAAD systems, U.S. naval vessels in the eastern Mediterranean reportedly launched large numbers of SM-3 and SM-6 interceptors as part of the broader missile defense effort. Now, it is important to note that some of these reports remain difficult to independently verify in full. But even the discussion itself has triggered serious concern among military analysts and strategic planners, because if a substantial portion of America's interceptor inventory was used during one regional conflict, the obvious question becomes, what happens if another crisis erupts somewhere else? And that is where countries like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan enter the conversation. These countries rely heavily on America's missile defense umbrella as part of their deterrence strategy against threats from North Korea and, increasingly, China. THAAD systems play a major role in that architecture. So when reports emerge suggesting U.S. interceptor reserves may have been significantly reduced, allies in Asia start asking uncomfortable questions. If tensions suddenly escalate in the Pacific, does America still have enough capacity to respond effectively? And perhaps even more importantly, can the U.S. defense industry replace these systems fast enough? That industrial question is becoming one of the biggest strategic concerns of the modern era, because modern wars burn through advanced weapons far faster than many governments expected. Missiles, interceptors, artillery shells, precision-guided munitions, all of them require enormous manufacturing capacity, and rebuilding stockpiles is not something that happens overnight. Some defense analysts argue this conflict exposed a broader vulnerability inside America's military-industrial system. The United States possesses extraordinary military technology, but sustaining prolonged high-intensity operations across multiple regions simultaneously is becoming increasingly difficult and increasingly expensive. There is also a political layer to this story. Donald Trump built much of his political identity around the concept of America First, the idea that American resources and military power should primarily serve direct American interests. But critics argue that using large portions of America's missile defense inventory to protect allies overseas complicates that message. Supporters counter that defending allies is itself a core American strategic interest, because if deterrence collapses abroad, larger conflicts become more likely later. And that debate is not going away anytime soon, especially as tensions continue rising not only in the Middle East, but also in Eastern Europe and the Indo-Pacific. Meanwhile, Iran still reportedly retains significant missile capabilities despite recent military operations. The ceasefire remains fragile, and American military planners are now forced to think about a difficult possibility. What happens if another major escalation occurs before depleted stockpiles can be rebuilt? That is the strategic dilemma now facing Washington, because modern deterrence depends not only on having advanced weapons, but on having enough of them. And in a world where multiple geopolitical flashpoints are heating up at the same time, every interceptor fired in one theater may matter somewhere else later. That is why this story matters far beyond Israel, far beyond Iran, and far beyond one specific conflict. It raises a much bigger question. Can the United States continue acting as the world's primary security guarantor while also maintaining sufficient readiness for future crises, or are the limits of military power, industrial, financial, and political, becoming harder to ignore? That debate is only beginning, and the rest of the world is watching very closely. That's your briefing for today. If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe for more deep geopolitical analysis, global strategy, and the stories shaping the world around us. And let me know in the comments, do you think the United States is carrying too much of the military burden for its allies, or is that burden the price of maintaining global influence? See you next time.